Welcome to Dungeons and Chances. And today, in what is our very first episode, it coincides with the dropping of the new 5e ish Tales of the Valiant from Cobalt Press. Today, I received copies in PDF of the Player's Guide instead of Player's Handbook and the Monster Vault. Now, a lot of you are probably interested in the Player's Guide. I'm not a player, I'm a dungeon master. So I like the monsters. And that's what tells me, do I want to use these monsters? Do I want to use this system? I also got copies for Shard on our favorite tabletop VTT. Shard has the Black Flag role playing system that you can set up as a setting. And it now has all of the creatures in the Monster Vault, all of the spells, all of the items, and all of the character options. They are a little unique. I will not go over those, though, on this video. This video, I want to keep it brief, and I want to just talk about what I've seen looking through the Monster Vault to tell me, do I want to run these monsters or not? And I have to say, yes, please. And let me tell you why. So first off, as we look through the Monster Vault, you can see the artwork is just distinct. All of the monsters, every single monster in here has its own artwork. And if you're like me, especially for the older people out there, like me, I have to be honest, I find that when I was young, I would love looking through. I mean, when Fiend Folio came out, and the Monster Manual 2 and everything, I would just flip through them and imagine these monsters, looking at the pictures, looking at maybe some of their unique abilities, and just thinking about what kind of stories could be told around these strange creatures. I mean, I couldn't tell you how many days I spent just looking through these books. Just many, many, many days, weeks, months, years of my youth was spent, flipping through these books and just dreaming up scenarios to be played. So I really like looking at monster art. And the artwork's really different here. I would like to point out later, after I show you a few other things, how they are somewhat reimagining how we see dragons in 5e. And I'll show you the artwork in that in a moment. So first of all, you see this is Tales of the Valiant, and it has its table of content. It shows you the different book covers that you get if you purchase the hardback of it. I really like the alternative one. I think that's pretty cool. It has your typical table of contents that gives you an index of all the creatures, tells you what's in the book, what are monsters, which is an interesting little sidebar. It tells you how to read them. Then chapter 1 goes straight into using monsters. How do we use them? What are suitable CRs for PC levels? Here is something I must add that I don't know how many people would know this, but a very, very popular writer and creator called Sly Flourish, who I am a Patreon of. Has his own book on how to create creatures that he made with Teo Sabadia. It's a great book. I backed it on Kickstarter, and I have a copy of it. He has his own encounter building rules on CRs, and he worked on it with Cobalt Press for this book. So you're going to find that the creatures here at CR per CR against 5e Dungeons and Dragons WotC creatures, the ones in this book are definitely going to give you more power per pound over the WotC creatures. And you'll see why when I show you some of the stat blocks. So They have some how to read this book, how to determine the challenging encounter benchmark, which is once again a big thing that Sly Flourish is always talking about and does such a great job in all of his writings to discuss it. And that is all reflected in this section of the book that he played a huge role in writing. So, right there, it tells you, I mean, he's got to be, when it comes to encounter design, he's got to be one of the best in the business. And he personally wrote and worked on with the team for this section. So you have your challenging benchmarks by average level. It's really interesting. I never go by these things. I just play it by ear because I feel like after running so many encounters, you understand players and you understand their powers and you kind of know what you can throw at them and how much you can't throw at them. And, you know, it's kind of like always, you can always add more because players just find a way to win. So it talks about different types of encounter models. Very interesting writing here, talking about having a single big monster and how you need to understand action economy. Yes, you do. It talks about bosses and lieutenants, match sets of foes, hordes of minions, waves of monsters, etc. It also talks about monster roles and their tactics. I love this stuff. This is great, especially for players who haven't maybe, or dungeon masters who are still learning and they just might need a little guidance. And this is simple guidance. This is easy to read. You go through it really fast, and it does have great tips for dungeon masters. He has an optional rule in here that Cobalt Press came up with called Doom. I want to mention Doom because it's very interesting. I look at this, I like it to give me ideas. I don't have to follow it exactly the mechanic that's given here. Just like everything that you have, all of these books, Dungeon Masters, I'm talking to you. You can make it your own. Take these ideas, make them your own. You don't have to follow any of this stuff. You can take the creatures here and change their armor classes. This is all guidance for you to use at your tables with your groups to have fun with. So, had to throw that out there. This optional rule that is called Doom is really interesting. So, it's a way to spice up like that big boss fight and give a little extra oomph to the creatures. So it is definitely optional, and they give you a number of points depending upon the tier of the creature. So if we had a 5 to 8 encounter CR rating, that would give you 2 Doom points to use. What can a GM do with the Doom points during that combat encounter? He can give a creature advantage on attack roll. He can give a PC disadvantage on a save. He can once per encounter use a Doom point to refresh or recharge a limited use feature. That's huge. You're not rolling the recharge for your Dragon's Breath? Boom. Spend a Doom point, get that Dragon's Breath out. Legendary resistances, same thing. Legendary, or maybe it's mage's spell casting. You need one shot more. So it tells you some guidelines on when to use it here. Obviously, if you have a strong party and you just need to give a little bit extra to make it that much more dramatic or exciting, that's their guidelines. Anyway, it gives great ideas for dungeon masters to use however you feel fit. I love this. This is good stuff. Talks about different traits that they have for creatures, and it explains and goes through all of them. I'm not going to go through all of that. Chapter 2 says understanding monster statistics. Talks about challenge rating. What's the XP you should get for a challenge rating? I don't know. Who's using XP anymore? I mean, you can, but are we really counting XP these days? I don't know. But if you are, they give you an XP by challenge rating. All of these things are to clear up your stat blocks for the creatures. If you have these things elsewhere, you don't have to clutter a stat block with things that you might not need to use or might not need to reference very often. So they talk about types, they talk about sizes, great art. They talk about categories and tags that creatures have. So if you have a creature who might be like a goblin, they're calling goblin a creature in this book. Goblins are goblinoids. So a bugbear falls under the goblin category. And you could have something that's going to have a tag that says animal. So you might have a beast, and that beast happens to be an animal, so it will be tagged. But you could have other beasts that aren't considered animals, or a construct, and you have a subcategory golem. Well, that's more humanoid type. So it will have different things that will affect it to where it could be maybe a construct that's just made of stone or something. There's a lot of different examples that they give here, and it's all shown on the stat blocks. One thing that I like is that every stat block has the creature's perception, his passive perception. So if you're stealthing, boom, it's right there in big print for me. And if the creature's stealthing against your perception, boom, it's right there on the stat block called stealth. So you'll have perception and stealth. It talks about all the senses. They have one called keen sense, which is interesting. I won't go into that, but it's something I had never heard of that they came up with. And of course, you have your limited usage actions, and they really use those. So you'll find that this is where it starts to differ from the standard 5e creatures. Here it talks about chapter 3, understanding terrain and creature types. And then it goes through something I like that says, okay, let's talk about aberrations. It gives you a little bit of background. What are aberrations? Where do they come from? You know, and to give people a better idea, instead of just saying, oh, that's an aberration, this book will give a little bit of a background on what aberrations are. What are aberrations really about? What's so different about their physiology? All of that is here briefly, as you can see, aberrations. It talks about who are their allies. What are their traits and themes? Really cool. And then you get these little charts. Here's all your aberrations listed together. Here's their CR ratings. Here is who might typically be their allies. Oh, you've got an Otiog? Oh, they work sometimes together with Darrow or Dro or Durgar. Very interesting. Then they do pronunciations for all of the creatures. That's interesting too, especially for people who are trying to, maybe English isn't their first language. This is really, really helpful. Goes down, it does this for all the creatures. Celestials, beasts. Here's the beast, there's the celestials. You have constructs, you have dragons, you have dragons is a whole page. Imagine that. Oh, I'm sorry, more than just a page. And all the dragon types. So they're putting the wyvern under dragon here. And of course the drake and the dragonette are dragons. That's a lot of dragons, as you can see, that's in this book. A lot of dragons. Elementals, fae, fiends, giants, humanoids, monstrosities, oozes, plants, undead. Then we get to the creatures themselves. As it says here, monsters from A to Z. We start with the aboleth. The aboleth is a great place to start. I pulled up on D&D Beyond. What's the 5e aboleth have? What does this aboleth have? Well, they're both CR10. They didn't mess really with the CRs. What they did was take a CR and make it that much stronger. So if you look at this stat block, also the art, I like the art. I like the color of this aboleth. It's Kind of nice. So if you see it has actions multi-attack, tentacle attack, now it has something called a psychic bolt, a ranged attack it did not have before. Does 3d6 plus 4 psychic damage. Very nice. Then it has a recharge. This is another thing you'll see in the Monster Vault. They give recharge abilities to a lot of creatures that didn't have them. This will make the creatures unique, almost like fighting them for the very first time because you won't know about all these things they can do. I go down to, I want to go to a few things that are common just to show some differences. And some of the things I saw, and I have to scroll through them. The Behir had something interesting. It has its lightning breath, just like the regular Behir has. But when it bites, it does 3d10 plus 6 piercing and 6d8 lightning in its bite. It did not have that in the 5e version. So what did they do? They lowered some other things, like the lightning damage, I believe, from the lightning breath is a little bit lower than what it is for the 5e. 12d8 when it might be d10s, I believe, with the 5e version. I can't remember if that's what it is, but basically. So there's a lot of creatures that have changes to them from 5e. I mean, a lot. We can look at something as simple as the ogre. But I guess before we get to the ogre, since I'm going down in alphabetical order as I'm flipping through these, and the artwork is just so great. You know, the barbed devil, that's pretty good art. But the Baylor is one I really like. Where's the Baylor? That's the rock. Now she, Marilith. Here we go. I just really like that artwork. That Baylor screams Balrog, which is where it comes from, but doesn't that just remind you of Balrog? I mean, that is absolutely this art. It's great. So we go to the dragons, and they have some differences with the dragons as well. You know, I don't know how different you can make Tyrannosaurus Rex, but that's pretty good art. The dinosaurs, the dragons are different. Here's your black dragon. It has a skinnier, elongated body. And they really pronounce that there are arms inside of the wings. Arms. You can see the skeleton of the arm and its claw go out. They show this because you can see here it goes, and then it's like its hand kind of reaches out of the wing. But this skeleton protrudes from right above their other arm, and all of their dragon art is the same. It's a more Asian type dragon. That is interesting. Look how elongated that head is. And you can really see that's another arm that's coming out here. And I don't see that representation in standard 5e dragon art. The blue dragon, very different than the 5e version. And you can see in every one of them, it has that arm that's represented for their wing. As you can see, all of the art, they're elongated bodies that are thinner, more of that Asian style. You can really see that that's an arm right here. I mean, there's no mistaking. And it's like these are its fingers, which leads you to believe that they can take those wings and close them up like a fan. So kind of, I want to say that was in like How to Train Your Dragon, right? I think they had that type of dragon wings. Anyway, that's what I'm seeing in this artwork, and it's just something I wanted to point out because it is different than what you would see with 5e creatures. Now, I don't want to go over all the creatures, of course. There's not enough time in the world to go through. This book has 387 pages. So, yeah, that's a lot. And this video is already 20 minutes. So, I will go and show you something that I think gives you an idea of how much this differs from regular 5e. So, I wanted to look at creatures that, a smaller band or party more typically would see, like an ogre. That fire giant, I love that sword, but it looks so Minecraft. Is it just me? It looks very Minecraft like, he got that sword somewhere mining. I don't know. Just looks that way. That's that's pretty cool. The bugbear art, I like that. That's a different bugbear. Definitely a different bugbear. This 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 is part of the goblins. So they have bugbears, a bugbear champion. You have goblins. These goblins, they look pretty bad. I like them. You have hobgoblin commander. These don't look like nice guys. Another thing that I'll tell you, when you look at the stat block, there is no ability scores, just the modifier. You don't need to know the ability score. You just need the modifier. So, because no one cares. Look at this one, stealth, 7. But if they don't have armor, 12. Interesting. They have spell casting, but the spell casting is like so many per day. That's it. This is how they're making stuff. Bonus actions and reactions. There's a lot of reactions for a lot of creatures, which I'll show you. But I got to get through these million creatures over here. It's going to take me forever. The Grick, that looks pretty cool. The Griffin. Let's see. I got to keep flipping. Going through the pages. Where are we at now? The Lich. Oh, the Lich. The Lich. The Lich is great. The artwork is great. But the stat block. CR21. They're serious. 314 hit points. This is no joke. They have a death-infused rod that does plus 10 to hit, 48 plus 3 bludgeoning, then 5d6 plus necrotic. And then I need a DC 20 save or be paralyzed for a minute. That's pretty cool. This is one hard-hitting Lich. No doubt about it. Let's see. We're going to go to some more standard creatures. The Manticore. Where is the Ogre? It's easier to find, and here we go, Ogre. So just to show, I've always found there's an adventure I've run, Kobold Press, that has an Ogre. And yes, he hits hard, and he's got hit points, but he goes down pretty fast. Here, the Ogre has a bowling sweep. It's a recharge ability. A bowling sweep, he can sweep his weapon in a wide arc around it. Each creature within 10 feet of the Ogre must make a DC 14 strength save. Small and smaller creatures have disadvantage on the save. On a failure, a creature takes 4d6 bludgeoning and is pushed up to 10 feet away from the Ogre and knocked prone. On a success, they take half damage. They're not knocked prone. I love this. Instead of just having one thing. Oh, it can hit with its club and do 2d8 plus 4. You know, no. So they tone down the damage a little bit for his standard attack, and then they give them something like this, the bowling sweep. That's going to hit hard. You go take down an ogre, you've got 2 or 3 melee people on them. He can do this at least once, bowling sweep. He can push everybody away and give them 4d6 bludgeoning. That's nice. That's kind of clearing the field. Then he can maybe move after he moves everybody 10 feet away from him. Then he has, speaking of that, he has a bonus action now, a shoving rush. He can take the dash action. He can propel itself onto one creature it sees on the path. It must succeed on a DC 14 strength save or be knocked prone. And the movement doesn't provoke opportunity attacks from a target that fails this save. So, hey, I need to get by that guy. I'm going to dash. Instead of taking the disengage action, I'm going to bonus action, shoving rush, and still be able to get the hell out of dodge by dashing. So you take the dash action, bonus action, shoving rush. I run up to one of those characters, and if I can knock him prone, no opportunity attack, and I continue dashing away. I love this. I love this against a sentinel creature. I'm trying to get away, and I can't because that guy has sentinel. Well, I'm going to go run up on him and try to shove him. And if I can shove him, I can get away. Maybe get to that spellcaster who's in the back. And that guy who's doing sentinel won't allow me to. These are just some of the things that I noticed that just make it different. And just for one more example of how different, I like this art for the purple worm, by the way. Just one more example, we're going to look at a lowly skeleton. Just as an example. That is not a skeleton. It looks like a skeleton, but must be a Minotaur skeleton. Yeah. We got a standard skeleton. I really like the artwork too on this skeleton. This skeleton gets a reaction called that recharges on a 6. So he won't get to use it much. But hey, it gives flavor to the skeleton. So there are no flavorless creatures in this book. I love it. I really do. When a creature the skeleton can see hits it with an attack, it can make one attack against the attacker, whether it be short sword or short bow. So if someone's shooting him from afar, and I can see that person shooting me, and they hit me, I can immediately use my reaction. Boom! I can counterattack him with a bow. Now, to get it back, I have to roll a 6. But now, my skeleton has a cool reaction. Makes him a little bit better than the lowly skeleton that we're always crushing through time and time again. Many of the creatures in this book have these recharge things that can be part of in their stat block as an action. It can also be part of a reaction or bonus action. So these are some of the things that I just wanted to point out to everyone. If you haven't seen, or if you didn't back Tales of the Valiant and get these books, you might be interested, if nothing else, buying the Monster Vault and getting those ideas that you can add to your creatures to make them hit harder and be that much more interesting in a combat encounter, giving you cool abilities that you can throw out on your players, and the players feel like, wow, that was a more interesting combat because I did my cool abilities, but so did you do some cool abilities. And it just makes things more fresh. That's all I have for this episode. Just wanted to share this real quick. It came out today. I had to make this video to show people what exactly is in this book. I want to thank everyone. I want to thank my Patreon members. Yay. Thank you so much. John, Nathan, Alex, thank you. Much love and appreciation to you. If you want to be a Patreon, I put it down into the blah, 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 as Matt Colville used to say before he said doobly-doo. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great weekend playing Dungeons and Dragons or Tales of the Valiant. Bye bye.